All right. Welcome to the Harlem Emergency Network live weekly broadcast. Bob Ponce here with Russell Crowley, our roving reporter and journalist, and Carol Johnson should be joining us later in the broadcast. So, Russell, today I think we want to talk about what happened this week, which is that this year was kind of the year of Juneteenth, where Juneteenth has finally come out into the mainstream and out of the shadows and is now being recognized as a holiday. So, you want to talk a little bit about what went on this week?
Yes, this whole week you saw and everyone saw throughout the country and the world seeing Juneteenth legislation being enacted by various governors of various states and uh, uh, and uh, and being enacted into law. We had the governor Cuomo uh, of Andrew Cuomo of New York signing legislation to make Juneteenth a state holiday, and New York recognizing it as a state holiday for state employees. And that was on Wednesday, June 17th. And on the next day, Mayor de Blasio, Bill de Blasio, signs an executive order making Juneteenth a public holiday in New York City for all city employees, man, city employees. So, and then throughout the country, various governors signing legislation to recognize Juneteenth as a national holiday, well, as a state holiday. We had Ralph Northern of Virginia, who came out early in the week, to recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday as well, and uh, and this was monumental for the people of Virginia,
Right, the oldest slave state. Yep.
the oldest slave state in the country. Correct, and very monumental. We had the governor of Kentucky signing the uh, the Juneteenth proclamation, declaring Juneteenth a state holiday. This is very monumental, also because Kentucky is also considered another one of the slave states of the Confederacy. Governor Carney declares closes the state of Delaware in honor of Juneteenth and signing legislation to make it a state holiday. Governor Wolf honors Juneteenth National Freedom Day in the great state of Pennsylvania, and this was very monumental also, um, as we march above the Mason-Dixon line and look at the state of Pennsylvania. And up to this date, Bob, uh, we have essentially, really, there were four states up until a month ago, and there's only three states yet to legally recognize Juneteenth as either a state or ceremonial holiday. And as people can see, Hawaii, North Dakota, South Dakota are the three remaining states. Before a month ago, or I believe a couple of months ago, Montana was the fourth state that
Mm-hmm.
had yet to come on board. But since the this year, as we moved into this year, Montana came on board,
Mm-hmm.
making Juneteenth as a state holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have the last three that is remaining, and Hawaii has an extraordinary history concerning the imperial and colonial invasion of the Western powers, especially United States,
Mm-hmm.
in the 1800s, that is well documented and an extraordinary piece of history. I think all your listeners should review and revisit again to see just to document and to see just exactly what happened there, and and come to the conclusion that Hawaii should be one of those should come on board, recognizing Juneteenth.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the state of North Dakota and uh, and South Dakota also need to come on board because um, many of the slaves who fled the South, you know, entered into those northwestern territories,
Mm-hmm.
such as South Dakota and North Dakota and
Mm-hmm.
uh, Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
uh, right, Montana,
Mm-hmm.
so forth and so on, Ohio.
Yeah. But
These states.
we're real close for this now. If we have 47 out of 50 states already having some official recognition of this celebration, so I think we're well on the way toward a national holiday. I mean, you think about the trouble we got had to go through to get the Martin Luther King's birthday as a national holiday, and the holdout there was Arizona, but they're not the holdout this time. So that's interesting. Yeah. So for people who want to find out more information about Juneteenth observance.
Foundation, yes, if they want to find out more about what's going on with the Juneteenth legislation,
Mm-hmm.
the submissions
Mm-hmm.
uh, to Congress to make Juneteenth a national holiday. This is what is being done now to make it a national holiday. They can sign on to the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation website, www.njof.org, and sign the petition,
Mm-hmm.
read the proclamation,
Mm-hmm.
and reinform yourself and revisit the history of the ending of slavery, slavery itself, and and uh, be a part of an extraordinary event that's occurring in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Over the week, Bob, and I just want to say over the week, I was a part of discussions and debates with people of color
Mm-hmm.
and our people,
Mm-hmm.
and many were felt that we do not need a Juneteenth. That Juneteenth is just a token present,
Mm-hmm.
a token gift to us, because we need more than just uh, a holiday.
Well,
We need,
I understand and I share the sentiment that we cannot stop at just symbolic gestures. We need obviously legitimate changes in policies and structures, but we should never forget the power of icons and symbols. And right now, we're going through a process of rearranging icons and symbols in this country that hasn't happened in a while. And so, the toppling of the statues, the removal of statues of people who basically were not heroes, people who were oppressors, it is important. But it's obviously it is not the place that we stop, and we obviously must be on guard to make sure that that's not the end of the line, and it's like, oh, well, we took down the statues, you should be happy now. The truth is that taking down a statue is not going to change our day to day lives. But there's gonna be at least a few people who had to stare at this abomination, and wherever they are every day, who don't have to do that. One less microaggression for us. So those things are important. But we know that this is an opportunity that we all have to seize the moment and push for real and legitimate change. So, Russell, I want to thank you for coming on. We look forward to seeing you again. And right now, we're going to bring on Carol Johnson.
Thanks for having me,
Carol,
Bob.
how are you? All right, Russell,
I'm
thanks for.
fine. Good morning, Bob. Good morning, Russell. Thanks again for joining us. Um,
Yes. So Carol, you worked the polls yesterday, huh?
oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yes, and it was a long day,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
as they always are, but some are just a little longer.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Well,
know,
it's good to see our people out there. Again, you utilizing our right to vote. And you know what they say: if you don't use it, you lose it. And
right?
that's literally a place that we're in this country. That if we don't use it this November, we can not only lose it, but we can lose a whole bunch of other things attached to it. So I appreciate and honor all of the poll workers yesterday. Obviously, this has been a strange environment to have uh, a primary election on because of COVID-19. I would imagine that the numbers were not high, partially because of COVID-19 and partially because all the stakes primarily on this election have pretty much been decided. Um,
Yeah, and the interesting thing, even with the early voting, people didn't come out. The
mm-hmm,
numbers were very low.
mm-hmm,
Yesterday, the numbers were very low.
mm-hmm,
And what I found interesting is generally, um, there's always machines that break down.
mm-hmm,
Every time I work the polls, there's machines. Now, yesterday, no machines broke down.
mm-hmm,
A lot of people were thrown off the road. There's a lot of
mm-hmm,
people who had to do affidavits. You know, a lot of people, no information was available for them.
mm-hmm,
And I've never ever done so many affidavits in the more than 15 years I've been doing this.
mm-hmm.
You know, so and then the end result, getting that final tally. I've never had that happen where we didn't have a result. When the
Oh,
slips came out, there was no result, and when we called the board of elections, they said there was a lot of people
mm-hmm,
complaining about that same issue.
mm-hmm,
So no matter how you look at it, it always seems to be some disturbances that make it more and more difficult for people to vote as time goes on, and makes people, it creates a deterrent.
mm-hmm,
You know, So I don't know, but then we noticed that these voting debacles took place across the country, and we're not surprised in
mm-hmm,
it. We're not surprised at all.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's well, at least we don't have some of the voter nullification stuff that goes on in the South. But we still, it was interesting that they wanted to call off this primary at one point,
Yeah,
correct? And then a judge ruled that that was illegal. So what was the reasoning behind calling off the primary?
your
they, they,
president.
they,
That's it. Plain and
yeah.
simply, your president. We're in the middle of a crisis still,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and what I found really interesting, that even in the midst of COVID and how relaxed, very relaxed people have come,
Mm-hmm.
they were still adamantly trying to not distance.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had workers that felt the same way, and we're
Mm-hmm.
like, no, 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 we can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do this. We have to still maintain those protocols.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about votes.
Mm-hmm.
person. Anytime you'd have closed rallies in the midst of the pandemic, say
Mm-hmm.
we're going to do less testing, we'll get less results.
Mm-hmm.
Some things are just so inanely stupid, you know, that I can't help but I don't even question what he says anymore.
Mm-hmm. So, back to the polling. I noticed this year that they have converted to a electronic system rather than the old paper system of signing in. So, how was that? How did that work? Was that happening in your polling place too?
Oh no, that's not new. That was introduced last year during the when the early voting came out the first
Yeah.
time. It was
Yeah.
introduced then, the ebooks.
Yeah, the last time I voted, I didn't. I know I signed up on paper. This is the first time I actually signed on the. I guess it was like a tablet of some sort.
Right.
Hmm.
But then that changed because there's columns
Hmm.
that your vote comes out, but now the people had to resort to manually voting again,
Hmm.
which was
Wow.
which was odd. So it was the ebooks in
Hmm.
concert with the manual voting. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on. It just keeps changing. But the
Hmm.
ebook really was so much easier, much
Hmm.
more effective. You didn't have to wait for those tabulations the same. But to have
Hmm.
so many people who could not tabulate the
Hmm.
vote in so
Hmm.
many sites, again, that's
Hmm.
questionable.
Hmm. Hmm. So we have to keep our eye on this. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about a subject that has been disturbing me. Although I can't say I have any information to add to it. I just have questions, and that is, it seems like there's been a real influx of illegal fireworks in the city, but also beyond the city, and we want to stress that we understand it's before the 4th of July we always have an influx of fireworks, but this year it's at a level that is just it's off the chain. It's going to wee hours of the morning, and then it's been followed up by some really aggressive. Well, I don't even know the right word to say it. All I know is that, like, the police have made a a huge show of force in the middle of the night. I guess in response to it, but they have ended up making more noise than the fireworks.
Right.
So, any thoughts about this?
Not only the fireworks, but now they're adding the car honking. Now I know
Mm-hmm.
they converged on the mayor on Gracie Mansion a couple of times this week, and then I think starting like Sunday,
Uh huh.
honking horns. I said, well, that's not helpful to the neighborhood either. But I've been
Mm-hmm.
noticing that over the last 2 days, that's been added. I hear a lot of car honking, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night,
Mm-hmm.
um, along with the fireworks. And I guess that's their way of protesting. If we can't sleep, you can't sleep, Mayor. But you're not helping.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know they've got this task force, and as people were saying, word on the street that these things are being dropped into our neighborhood. Now, this is a time when the more affluent people in our neighborhoods don't have money to spend on fire on they don't have money. They can barely pay their own bills.
Right.
But so we know that nobody's purchasing this. No one's got the money to
Mm-hmm.
purchase these things. So absolutely, they're being dropped here. That's nothing new. Like the guns and everything that's been dropped here. You
Right.
know, firepower that costs six figures. What little black person on 104th Street and First Avenue can afford that?
Right.
So these things have always been dropped in our neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
and
So,
that's the thing.
mm-hmm.
You know,
I've
get to the
heard
bottom of it.
I've heard unconfirmed reports that there have been SUVs that have been going around that have been dropping fireworks and even giving them to kids for free.
Mhm.
I've not been able to verify this by someone who could tell me this directly, but we want people, if anyone has any more information on this, We would love you to share it with it. So we're going to put some information on the screen there. You could either send an email to Harlem Emergency Network at gmail.com, or you could leave a message for us at 347 And if you have any information regarding the illegal fireworks, specifically the source, we're not looking to go after little Junior because he's been shooting stuff up. You know, the truth be told, many of us elders, and I had this conversation when we were young people, we shot off fireworks too. So this is not about trying to criminalize the kids who are doing it. If there are kids doing it, we would still want them to stop, but we don't want them to be engaged with the police over this, because one of my, and this again, my own opinion, this is not this is just a personal fear of mine, that this excess of fireworks can be used as an excuse for more aggressive policing. And we did see this show of force where they were out late at night with I don't know, 20, 30 vehicles and the sirens, and we've seen them do. I've always seen them do that from time to time during the day, but doing it in the middle of the night,
Right.
it's excessive. And I think people are feeling, after having 2 months of relative calm, now all of a sudden it sounds like a war zone going on in between the fireworks and then the police with the sirens at the middle of the night. And this is at a time when we're now in phase 2, so people are going back to work. So having somebody making all this noise at 4 in the morning, it's like psychological warfare. And the other issue that is disturbing is that it's not just happening in our community, it's happening all over the city, and it's happening in other cities as well.
Yeah.
And it's happening at a volume that we have to look at what the source is of this. So again, we encourage anybody who's got more information on this to please let us know, and maybe next week we'll be able to give you a more detailed report on what's going on with that, and what we think the source is. So I think we want to round out just again talking about the current state of COVID-19 in New York. We've now moved on this week to phase 2. Businesses are reopening with restrictions and conditions in terms of size and social distancing and use of masks, so forth and so on. Um, so I think we continue to tell people that you still want to take protection and protocols. And the main reason is, and we want to be clear, the numbers have definitely shown that we have flattened the curve. I look at the hospitalization numbers every day or every 2 days, and even with these protests, that number has stayed flat. I'm a little disturbed that we can't get more granular information about zip code by zip code. Earlier on in this, we were able to look at the zip code maps, and now we haven't seen that for a little while on the New York City website. So we're still monitoring the situation in the areas that have been hotspots. And Carol, you can talk more about this, about the fact that a lot of things that were supposed to have occurred to help us deal with the situation still never occurred in the areas of greatest need.
Yeah, we still have limited resources and testing. I always wondered where they got those numbers when they said that East Harlem, the 10029 and 335 were the hottest spots, because there was so little testing going on.
Hmm.
So I always wondered where those numbers came from.
Hmm.
But I think the numbers must be a lot higher, because if you had few people tested and you have that high a rate of people who not only have the infections, but people who have died from it, then it's got to be a lot greater. So
Mm-hmm.
we're still dealing with the same issues. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, I say the city can be going into phase two of reopening. In so many ways, we're still in phase one of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So the PPE and they're still difficult to get. People still have no money to purchase them. The city seems to have stopped distributing them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, so I'm grateful that a lot of us, even like behind everybody else, we're starting to get that. We're connecting with different organizations that will make masks and get them to people. Um, we're not even worried about the second wave. We're still in the first wave. I read an article where, doctor was saying this is like a forest fire that will continue to burn.
Mm-hmm.
People keep talking about another wave. This wave, he says, I don't know if it's going to be a second or third wave. I think we're just going to have a wave. It's just
Right.
something that's going to continue.
Right.
So
Um, I
I
think
just
people.
want to say one more thing is that even when you have people like Dr. Fauci who says, listen, I'm not listening to anybody up there in the White House. I'm telling you right now, this is the way it needs to remain. And
Mm-hmm.
people are not taking that seriously. So now that people are traveling, and what was that? Um, everyone who was in Myrtle Beach. They said anybody who went to Myrtle Beach, you need to quarantine. So people are traveling. We don't know what those numbers are going to look like. We don't know if they're ever going to give us the real numbers.
Right.
People bringing it back from different states and hanging out in Florida and hanging out down in North in South Carolina. We just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I still say, B, you still got to still stick with those protocols. I don't care what nobody say. You can reopen all you want. I'm not reopening, but so much.
Mm-hmm. I think people have to understand that even though we can see that we flatten the curve here, our biggest issue is that we're in New York. The reason why it came here in the first place is that we have more people travel through this city. And now that things are opened up, we're going to have people who live here who just want to get out for a bit. And where they're going to go? Go to Florida, go to North Carolina, go to South Carolina. They can get it, bring it back, and then all of a sudden, boom. And the thing about this particular virus for people to remember, even if even if it's okay in 95% of the city, all it takes is one instance to get in here, and if it gets to a building or a group of people, it it just spreads like wildfire. And this has been the danger of it, is that when it shows up, it acts aggressively, but you don't know that it has come until maybe 10 days later, 15 days later, and at that point in time, you already have a problem. So we just want to continue to tell people to do the basics. Wear the mask, keep the social distancing, tune up your immune system. We say this, this is still to this day, no one has talked about it like us, but your best defense of this is still taking the right nutrients so that your body can defend yourself in it. And so if you're not doing that, you're leaving yourself wide open.
Wide open, yeah.
Um, and truth be told, you need to do it anyway because let's not be we talked a lot about Juneteenth. We talked about the symbols that have been going on, and everybody's singing "Kumbaya" for a couple of weeks because they don't want to see Black America go to a place where we start looking for revenge instead of reparations. Um, but this too will pass, and we're still in an economic crisis that affects us more than anyone else. And so we have to go into a mentality of upping our game across the board. And one of those things includes protecting ourselves. Now that we know that pandemic is a threat, now that you spent 2 months, 3 months learning how to deal with it, live with it, cope with it, it's not time to just throw that out and say, okay, it's over, it's never coming back. No, it's time to say, all right, what did I learn in the last 2 months? How do I incorporate these practices into my life? And how do I prepare myself so that I'm ready for more of what's coming? Because the next crisis doesn't have to be COVID. But there's a next crisis coming. This country right now is unstable, and we're going to be more and more unstable as we go toward the election. You have to account for the possibility that we have a president right now like a wounded animal. What do you say about a wounded animal? That's when they're most dangerous. And so, in a bid to change directions or whatever, there are many scenarios that can happen between now and November that are not good for us. And so the thing is, we are a resilient community. We've shown that we're resilient, but this is not the time to now go back asleep. We got a little cold water splash in the face over COVID-19, but it woke us up to some very glaring realities about how we are living and where we're positioned in this particular country. And the fact that other people are seeing issues that we have to address is important, but we've got to address them for ourselves. We got to prepare ourselves first. We can't wait for legislation and elections. We have to have a game plan for our community that's now a game plan that prepares for us regardless of who wins in November. And we still don't know. There's no foregone conclusion to say who is going to win either way in November. And so we have to use this summer not as a time to relax our guard, but it's the time to be more vigilant.
Right. And I keep hearing the same thing like, yeah, but that's my sister. That's my cousin. People are hugging and, families are gathering in small apartments for birthday parties, 30 people, 15 kids. I'm looking at them in the park. Nobody's distancing. It's not over. And this is not it's not discriminatory. It's not going to say, well, that's a family who loves each other and they've got to be together.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who's got it.
Right.
You don't know who's asymptomatic, and you don't know when things are going to happen, and you don't know there's so many more symptoms that they
Mm-hmm.
keep popping up with. We found all these different things, blue toes, and people getting bone muscle aches. Before it was like aches in the bones. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different things that's going on that we don't know about this thing. But
Mm-hmm.
still, you can still love. We've all heard the term love from a distance. We didn't say they had to be across the street, but they still need to be 6 feet apart.
Right.
You know. So now we have the 4th of July, which is not a good time for the 4th of July to come rolling in now that the city's open. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's like people are literally beginning to live like it is over.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the article I sent to you, Bob, and it said, we may be over with COVID, but COVID is not over with us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yep.
done with us.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So again, if numbers start to rise, would we even see that?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
because we've reached this milestone, we've hit that curve.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be an embarrassment to open up the city and now go into phase 2 and find out the numbers are rising?
Mm-hmm.
Or would we ever really know?
Right. Yeah.
So it's up to us to protect ourselves. I don't worry about what the politicians say. I have to protect myself.
Right.
So I
Good.
advise people to continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. That's it. All right, so I think that's it for this week. We hope that everybody is doing well, staying healthy, staying safe. Reminder, if you have more information about what's going on with illegal fireworks, look at the number or email below and please leave us a message or send us an email on what you know. Thanks again for Russell Crowley for coming in and sharing information about what's going on in Juneteenth. And we will see you next week, 9:30 right here, live on Facebook, live on YouTube.
Have a great week.